Well, it's day 4. I keep feeling the urge to say welcome back, even though this is all part of the same video. Or is it? I'm not quite sure now. This is the 4th day. I took the weekend off for the Silent Movie Marathon 2. Back again here Monday, and I just feel like of all the footage I've filmed so far, covering 8 films, and there's probably another 20 to go, if not more, this video could end up being the longest I've ever done. And then I don't really think people want to see a video that's like 4, 5, maybe even 6 hours long. I mean, I just don't know where it's going to go, you know, because I get carried away with these films, and sometimes I can talk for 15 minutes about a certain film, and when you look at 20 films, if not more, that's when you start to get a bit of a problem. And so I think maybe I might kind of split this up, kind of old school style, silent cinema style, into acts. You know, maybe like have a 1 hour act and then another 1 hour act, and then so people can kind of split them up, and it can be more of a series but seen as one big whole thing. I don't know, we'll see where it goes. See, I'm revealing the process to you right now. There is no real set vision in terms of that, because I wasn't really expecting this to go on for as long as it is going on already, and will go on even longer from this point forward. And it just feels like, well, what were you expecting, Luke? You've watched 8 films already into this Silent Movie Marathon 2, and the first Silent Movie Marathon had 8 films in it and was 2 hours long. So yeah, I should have just maybe done the math a little before I started this, but nonetheless, it is day 4. We're moving on to the 9th film. I believe it's the 9th film, and it's going to be Wings, another Eureka Massive Cinema release, and can't wait to check it out. I think I got this even like last year sometime, so this one I've been holding on to for almost a year, specifically for this marathon, and I'm really excited for it. Great front cover, I love the artwork. Any wrestling fan might be tickled to know that the one of the leading man is called Charles Buddy Rogers. And there's a big sticker on here, well, not sticker, but a circle that says first ever Academy Award winner, 1927 to 1928 Best Picture. Now Sunrise, a Song to Humans, which I watched last year in the Silent Movie Marathon, also won an Oscar for Best Film, but it won an Oscar for Best Artistic Picture, and this one won Best Picture. And so this is really considered the true best film of 1927, and I was going to say 2007, of 1927, and the first ever film to win Best Picture. So it's very interesting, and I want to kind of compare the two in a way. And oh, I'm just having a look on the back here a second. 2 optional scores, one that has sound effects by Ben Burt. Okay, that's interesting. I'm not sure if I want a score with the sound effects. We'll just see where it goes. We'll see where it takes us. But yeah, it's a film that has, well, I'll talk about it because I know stuff about the film. I'll talk about that in the review. Let's just get on with it. Give it a watch. It'll be the first kind of epic of the marathon, really. This one's 2.5 hours long, so time to dive right into it. Here we go. Wings. Okay, I just got done watching Wings about 2 hours ago, and yeah, it was pretty awesome. Really, really enjoyed it. It was directed by William A. Wellman. I've not heard of him before. And as I mentioned earlier as well, it was the winner of Best Picture at the Oscars at the first ever Academy Awards in 1928, I believe, maybe 1929, not sure when the ceremony was taking place, but it was for the years of 27 and 28 that it was counted, I think. And again, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans won for Best Artistic Picture. And so that comes down to now, what do I think really deserved to be the Best Picture of 1927? This or Sunrise? I think this. I think Sunrise is better. I prefer Sunrise, but Sunrise is more of an artistic film in a way, and this one is much more mainstream. And so for that, you know, I kind of think that this probably does deserve a more all-encompassing win, and I think it sits very nicely as the first ever Best Picture winner for the Oscar. And I wonder if they knew back then how big the Oscars were going to be in the film industry, or whether it was even conceived to be that gold standard, no pun intended there, for the movie industry. Either way, very interesting nonetheless. But the film itself, I mean, what sold me on it, what really interested me, and I'm sure is what would interest modern audiences, in fact probably audiences at the time as well, were the flight sequences in this film. It is a World War I film. It is about the war, and it features many scenes of flight and, you know, dogfights, you know, planes flying through the skies, through the clouds, amidst the heavens, and firing at each other, and crashes and explosions, all sorts. and so it's kind of the selling point of the film, was these fantastic action sequences, and they really were breathtaking. They were stunning, they were jaw-dropping, and the real cool thing is that the two lead men in this film, the actors were taught to fly the planes, and so they did it for real. You know, you have the camera on the front of the nose of the plane, looking at the actor as he's driving the plane, or flying the plane, piloting the plane, and you see all the clouds in the background, you see the other planes, and it's just, it is unbelievable. You know, it has such an air of realism about it that it's hard to believe in a way. It feels otherworldly, like they can't have done that for real, surely. And by doing that, they make other scenes which I could tell weren't real feel more real. And then there's some bits I just had no, like, how did they do that? How did they do that? I'm sure that some of the scenes they had a back projector or something, because it would have been too dangerous. But then again, maybe they did, and I like that I don't quite know. You know, like there's some scenes where like someone's flying the plane through the sky, and then he gets killed, and he just flops at the controls, and then the plane just goes nosediving up or downwards, and the background starts spinning, and it's like, did they just do that for real? Did they just, you know, no pun intended, wing it? I don't know, but it was just a spectacle, and that's what I was, you know, hoping to get out of it. That's what I got out of it, but I wasn't sure about the story or the characters, where that would take me, and it took me to a pretty interesting place. I thought the characters were great. I love the story. I love the setup. There's kind of, well, not really four main characters, but there's three main characters, but four that are key to the story. We have Sylvia Lewis, which is my mum's name, so that was very interesting to see at the beginning of the film. Sylvia Lewis, the girl from the city. There's Sylvia Lewis, who's this girl who comes in from the city, and our main characters live in kind of a small town, I guess. And then there's David, I forget his second name, David, who is the who's kind of the richest kind of lad in the town. David is played by Richard Arlen. And then we have Jack Powell, played by Charles Buddy Rogers. Jack Powell is kind of the dreamer. You know, the film opens, he's like on his back looking up, almost like Boyhood in a way. That shot where he's looking up at the skies and dreaming of flying, and he strips down his car and he calls it the Shooting Star. And you know, again, dreams of being a pilot, and he goes on to be a pilot in World War I. And Jack's next door neighbour, played by Clara Bow, who is billed at the top of this film. Her character's name is Mary, and Mary Preston, and she kind of has her eyes on Jack, but Jack is sweet on Sylvia, this girl from the city. But so is David, and David, the rich boy, the privileged boy with the silver spoon in his mouth, he is also sweet on Sylvia. And Sylvia likes David, so they're a good match. But but Jack thinks he got something going with Sylvia, and there's a bit of miscommunication going on there. And I won't tell you where it goes in case you end up watching the film. But it's very nicely done, and it sounds more complicated now I'm explaining it. But those four characters really are integral to the plot of the film, even though Sylvia is probably only in the film for about 3 or 4 minutes. And Clara Bow as Mary Preston, she's probably only in the film for, I'd say, a sum total of 25 to 30 minutes maybe. Maybe a bit longer than that, but it's a 2.5 hour long film and she's not in it. Well, maybe a bit longer. 30 to 40 minutes max, I'd be willing to bet Clara Bow's in this film, and she's the, you know, she's billed as the top star in a way. I don't know if that's the same when it was released or whatever. If it's just for this poster or this Blu-ray cover. Love the artwork, by the way. This here is Jack Powell, and that is Mary. And I find that pose interesting, and if you've seen the film you probably know why. But yeah, so it's a very simple kind of setup to a love story, and the guy who plays Jack is great. The guy who plays David, Richard Arlen, was incredible. I loved him in this movie. And what I loved, I don't know if it was intentional or not, was the fact that David, the privileged boy, you know, the one who the girl wanted, you know, Sylvia, he was my favourite character. And he's kind of the one that you would not like typically in a film, because he is that privileged boy who's got a chip on his shoulder and thinks the world owes him something. And then Jack is the one who you root for and you like him. He's the everyman who just wants to go out there and get it, and he goes out there and he, you know, becomes the hero and that kind of thing. And I found him really unlikable throughout the first half of the film. And there is a great arc to Jack's character. He grows up throughout the film, and it's kind of about, I guess, how people do grow up, or you know, did and do, I guess, in wars in general. But you know, World War I, you had these kids going out there to battle. You know, I think Mary says it at one point. He's just a boy. You know, he doesn't know what he's doing. And so there's a great, you know, emotional arc for Jack, and a growing up and a coming of age through, you know, the horrors of war, basically. So I loved his arc, but at the beginning I found him to be the opposite of what the archetype of that character is, which is likable. I was rooting for David because David, from everything I saw, he liked Sylvia, she liked him, and he wasn't a bad guy. He really wasn't. He wasn't pretentious. He wasn't up himself. He was just a nice guy, and kind of his status in a way kind of put him against Jack. They locked horns in a way. So they both go off to cadet school, and they go off to to be in World War, basically in World War I, and fight in France. And I don't know too much about World War I or anything like that, but I found it utterly gripping. I loved all the stuff. From the training to going out there to France to the battles and stuff, and the whole story, where the story went. I'll just turn my phone on silent so I don't get distracted yet again. Let's see who it's from. Anyone we know in the YouTube community? No, it's not. Anyway, yeah. What else can I say? Well, there's loads I can say, really. I mean, I loved the cinematography was incredible. There's a great shot early on in the film where it's just David and Sylvia on this kind of swing, and they're both swinging, and the camera's on the swing, and it was just a really dynamic shot. And as they kind of go up and they obscure the view of the background, and then they come back down and you can see the background, like ever so slowly, Jack comes into view in his car. It's a really nice reveal of his character. Well, not reveal of his character, we've already seen him, but reveal of his character into that scene. That was a great little dynamic moment. There's just the way the camera moves is very much ahead of its time. I remember seeing the way Fritz Lang filmed M in 1931 and thinking, wow, the movement of the camera is so dynamic. But here's 1927. Again, the same thing can be said of Sunrise as well. Just the smoothness of the way the camera moves sometimes. The shots are ahead of their time in a way, and just the way the camera is used to tell the story is great. And of course you got all the flying scenes, which are I just think, how did they do that back then? They got these all these classic World War I planes flying in the air, spinning out of control. I mean, I don't know how they did it. When they fire the guns, the bullets, or they look like little laser beams actually, kind of tinted onto the print. I don't know if that was, surely it must be an original. They tinted it at the time by hand, I guess, frame by frame. When planes go down, the flames are kind of hand tinted to give it that burst of colour amidst all the, well, not even the black and white, because I think the whole film is tinted in some way, and it's not like you see in some films where it's really just kind of subtle tinting. Although at night you do get the kind of quite stark blue tint, but the film looked amazing on Blu-ray, absolutely incredible. I loved just the restoration. And it's a shame because I've read that the restoration for this still hasn't kind of paid off for Paramount, I think, which is a real shame, which means more restorations like this may not happen in the future. Though I could have read an article that's out of date and a couple of years old, I'm not too sure, but it'd be a shame if that was the case, because I just love seeing films like this brought back to their full and former glory, and for a whole new generation, almost 100 years later, to enjoy and appreciate. Now, if you don't want to know any spoilers about this, I don't know, try and skip ahead the video maybe. But basically, David and Jack, they become friends, and it's a great scene where they're in training and they're fighting, everyone's boxing, and again, a very unlikable thing, Jack just beats the shit out of David and he bloodies him up. And David's just like, come on, let's keep going, let's keep going. And they just end up laughing and like embracing and walking off like, bloody hell, just like that. That was a fight, and then they just become friends, and it was really cool. I liked that. It got to me in a way, and it was kind of like the only way Jack could lower his kind of alpha male defenses to someone like David was to just see that he had something more in him. But I love that dynamic between the two and how their relationship changed, how they became best friends, and it's almost like Top Gun in a way. I've never seen Top Gun, but you have these two best friends now and they have their own little things they say to each other. Like they'll get in the planes and David will say all set and Jack will say okay, and then they fly off and they're brothers in arms, and then that comes into play later on in an emotional way that I really wasn't expecting. And again, this could maybe go into spoiler territory. I won't give away like the big kind of plot points, but for me the love story in the film was between David and Jack. That was it. They have a scene at the end which is very emotional, and it got to me, and I didn't expect that. I was very drawn into the film. Quite a few scenes where I was really invested in what was happening. I was on the edge of my seat literally, and but the ending, I was just like, wow, it got me. Very, very emotional. I mean, not like ridiculous, but like, you know, it touched a nerve there. And it's a melodrama, but it didn't go too far for me. I felt like it was just right, and I just really, really liked it. There's maybe a bit between the kind of the storyline between Jack and Mary that I thought, you know, could have been dealt with a little bit better. But I guess it's more things left unsaid, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So maybe if I watch it again, I'd probably enjoy that part even more. I did enjoy it. I just thought maybe a couple of lines more, maybe, I don't know. But overall, it was a fantastic film. Loved it, loved it. The war scenes are just harrowing. I mean, there's a few bits where you see some of the soldiers and they're not really falling over properly. They look a bit staged, but there's some that just really just like, they just jolt you into the action like shit, you know, and it just really makes you think like how lucky we are to not have to go through what that generation did. It gives you a whole new appreciation. For me, it does anyway. Even though this is fictionalized war, it just puts you in there. And I'm sure you could watch documentaries that will have an even greater effect in terms of that. But for me, you know, I love films and I watch films more than I do documentaries, and so I think it's a great way for the medium of film to inform future generations and to make them aware of stuff that happened. I think films like this are very important, and it's an entertaining film that has A, a message to it, and B, it educates you on the history of things that happened. I mean, again, I'm not even saying that this is like historically accurate to exactly what happened in World War I, but just showing you that war ruins lives. End of. It's a simple message, but it is told starkly, without kind of holding back, and yet it's a really entertaining film. There's lots of funny moments here. The humour is great. It's almost ahead of its time in that way, I thought. Just really funny little beats. Clara Bow was fantastic as Mary. She's so funny in the role, just a real kind of a klutz, really. And she was just fantastic. And there's great scenes in the film. The scene in Paris is brilliant when Jack is on leave and Mary goes to meet him and stuff, and all the hijinks that goes on. And then the battle scenes, you know. The scope is incredible, and the way it's put together is fantastic. I definitely call this one of my favourite war films now. And the characters, again, just brilliant. The relationship between Jack and David, I have to say, is probably one of my favourite kind of buddy relationships in film. I absolutely loved that whole part of it. It was brilliant. Now the score, as you'll probably remember, I was saying I wasn't sure whether to watch it with the, let's see, the JS Zeminek. The JS Zeminek, we'll just call it that, score, with sound effects by Ben Burt, who's the guy who did the sound effects for Star Wars. He won the Oscar for that. And another score by Gaylord Carter. So I had no idea what to choose, so I kind of sampled both of them during the beginning and kind of skipped through the film a bit. Gaylord Carter won. The Gaylord Carter score sounded very old-timey, kind of just like piano, like little ditties and stuff, and it seemed very fitting to the silent era. And then the JS Zeminek score felt very modern and lush and orchestral, and I thought, okay, that's the one they've done recently, so I'll probably go with the Gaylord Carter one. Then I thought, I need to find out. So I went downstairs, opened my laptop up, went online, found an article by someone who watched the film when it had been restored and it was shown at a screening, and Ben Burt was there, who did the sound effects for the restoration. And I found out that the JS Zeminek score was the original score that came out in 1927. I thought, wow, I've got to go with that. I have to go with the original score. I love it when the original score is intact or has been re-recorded, and you know the original intention is there. I love that. I'm all about the purity of it. But you can't watch it with the original score without the sound effects. So you have the whirring of the planes, you have the noise of them flying through the sky, you have the guns, the machine guns firing, you have noises of people punching each other when they fight, and all these little things that are added in. Bubbles and things. There's a big bubble scene. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, and the guy who wrote the article, who saw the film in the screening, said he really didn't think it worked, and it kind of made the film feel incomplete, because you have all these sound effects and music but no dialogue. And he broached the subject to Ben Burt, and Ben Burt was like, well, it's, you know, it's a non-talking film, you know. But I have to say, having watched it, I liked it. I was concerned that I wouldn't, I really was, but I can go along with it because the score was great. Used a lot of other like classical music. JS Zeminek used a lot of that stuff within the score, and I believe the people who re-recorded it added some stuff because there was only 14 reels worth of his score and they needed a bit more. So I'm all for them reinterpreting some of that stuff, but for the most part it is the original score, and you have all the sound effects. I wouldn't mind checking out the other score just to see what it's like without the sound effects, but I don't think it took away from it. And apparently William A. Wellman's son said, you know, that's, my dad probably would have seen this and said, that's how I wish the film had been. And Ben Burt even said that when the film was shown and screened, when it came out, they had sound effects kind of performed live and stuff like that. But the guy who wrote the article was like, but he's not around. He's the artist, and he should have the exact final say. And I thought, well, you can take that a bit too far sometimes. For me, I went along with it. I enjoyed it. Definitely was interesting to hear sound effects, but I got used to it. And yeah, I'd probably give the other score a look at some point, just because I love the film so much. I'd like to see what else it has to offer in terms of the music. But overall, I think it's a 10 out of 10. I had little niggles here and there, and there's a really funny thing. Seven Samurai, my second favourite film of all time. I think it is the greatest film ever made. There's a moment in it when Toshiro Mifune, he stabs someone like down in the woods, and the guy's on his back, and he kind of like throws the knife into his stomach, but he does the old, you just put it there, just past it, so it looks like it, but you can kind of see that he didn't even touch him. And I think, like, for me, Seven Samurai, greatest film ever made, but it does have that stupid goof in it. And the same thing in here, you got the soldiers with the bayonets, and one kind of stabs them, and you just see that he doesn't even touch him. But there's some great moments as well, like when the pilots are flying and they get shot, and then like they kind of go like that, and then the blood starts coming out, like really realistic stuff. So yeah, I can forgive some of the smaller imperfections because I love the characters, I love the story, I love its message, I love the epicness of the war, the way it makes you think about the war and appreciate the present, and remember the past with reverence, and also just enjoy it for an entertaining film. There's this guy in there who's really funny. What's his name? Herman Schmimpf or something like that. And people are like, "Oh, you can't be in the army. You're not American." And he's like, "Look at my bicep," and he's got like stars and stripes forever. And he's like a real funny kind of comic relief kind of character. So there's all sorts of stuff in there. There's emotion, drama, humor, spectacle, the special effects. I mean, there's this scene where this village gets blown up, and I'm just like, how the fuck did they do that without killing everyone? It just looks so real. Sometimes I could tell that they were model shots, but there's another shot where there's all these soldiers in a room, and the whole roof just collapses on top of them. It's mental. There's a car crash where it just looks like, and there's like planes swooping down to cars, and they did it for real. It is crazy, batshit crazy, but I loved it. 10 out of 10 for me, just because of all the moving parts were just greater than any of the imperfections and made it one big masterpiece. 2.5 hours long almost. Absolutely fantastic. Wings, go check it out. And now next I'm going to watch one more film tonight. I almost feel like that should just be its own day today because I loved it so much. But I'm going to watch this one because it's only about an hour and 15 minutes long. And because it's the night, I feel like it's time to watch it. My battery's running out, so I'll be very quick, but it's going to be The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Another Eureka Massive cinema release, one of the classic horror films from 1920, I believe. Yep, so there we go. Can't wait to check this out, and I'll get back to you after I've seen it. Alright, it is now, I guess, technically day 5 of the marathon, and I could have recorded after I'd finished the last film, which is the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but it was about 3 AM, and I just couldn't be bothered to kind of go down to the basement or anything. And it would have been nice to talk about it straight afterwards, because I just felt like watching it late at night was really cool as well, because it was like, late night horror, that kind of thing. But ultimately I just decided to go to bed and maybe sleep on it, because I was quite in two minds about this film. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, a fantastic release by Eureka Massive Cinema. As always, the film looked amazing, by the way. I mean, for a film made in 1919 and 1920, it just looked incredible, and you can tell where they kind of, not that Eureka did the restoration, it was the, was it the FWMS, is it? Yeah, the FWMS did an extensive restoration last year, and they kind of, were dealing with different prints and stuff, so there's certain shots in the film that don't look as good as others, but it all looks really good. But there's some shots where the clarity, it looks like it was filmed today, and they just tried to make it look old by putting some kind of just old-timey scratches in there. I mean, they really cleaned it up with fantastic precision to a point, and it wasn't a case of kind of digital noise reduction either. It just looked really natural and film-like and wonderful. This is what, we are so lucky to be living in this time where Blu-rays are being released of films like this, and we can see them in quality of this caliber. It's fantastic. Now the film itself is a very interesting one. I don't know if it's the first instance, and again you can get lost in like, oh, this is the first horror film, or this is the first film that did this and that, but it might be one of the first instances where you have a film that has kind of a framed narrative, where the beginning has someone telling a story and the film is the story, and at the end of the film you have like the epilogue of him finishing the story. And so you have this man, I forget his name now. There's a guy called Alan in the film, I know that much. I forget the main character's name though, damn. So there's a main, oh here we go, no. Caesar, we'll call him Caesar. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but the creepy guy on the front is called Caesar. We'll call him Caesar. It's not spelt like Caesar, but Caesar. I don't know. We'll just say Caesar for now. Who cares? But there's a guy, just a normal guy, and he's telling the story of how something bad happened, and it goes to this German town, and there's a guy called Dr. Caligari who turns up in the town. Crazy guy with white hair and glasses and dirty face and very stark characteristics and in the way he performed it, and very over the top, and just really brilliant performance by the guy who played Dr. Caligari. And he comes into town and he's got a little sideshow attraction. He's trying to get people from the village to come and see, and it's this what does he call it, the somnambulist. I have no idea what that means, but basically this guy who's been asleep for 23 years, and he's got him in a coffin, the guy here. And so he opens a coffin, and the guy comes out and he opens his eyes, and it's an incredible, striking sequence. And he says that the somnambulist can tell you the future. Ask him anything you want, because he can see the past and the future at the same time, kind of thing. And so we got this creepy character, and then these murders start happening in the town, and so everyone kind of thinks, well, maybe it's this guy. But then it turns out Dr. Caligari has kind of an alibi for it, and like the plot gets muddled, and not muddled like in terms of bad, but like you're not quite the people in the story are not quite sure what's going on. Is it him? Is it someone else? I mean, what's going on? Are we taking his creepiness too far and thinking maybe well, it doesn't really go into that, but the main character, his friend Alan, I remember his friend's name, Alan. He asks Caesar, when will I die? And Caesar says, at dawn, tomorrow. And he's like, oh my god. And then he's like, oh, it's just all a bit of fun, bit of show. And then he dies, and he gets murdered in the morning. And so Alan's friend, the main character, the guy who's at the beginning of the movie telling someone else the whole story, he's trying to find out who did it, and he's kind of suspecting this Caesar character, because he predicted the death, kind of thing. And he's trying to figure out what's going on with Caligari, and the film's split into 6 acts. I don't know if it needed to be split into acts, because this is a film that's only an hour and 17 minutes long. You have the big epics like Die Nibelungen that's like 5 hours long, and that needs to be split into acts. But 6 acts, and they just start and end and just keep going. I mean, they didn't really need to be there. The intertitles in this are really interesting, because they're all stylized in like, I guess you could say, if you look at the text on the front of the cover that says the film's title, Das Cabinet des Dr. Caligari, that's the font basically of all the intertitles, and they have these weird abstract shapes on the black. And there's even, the first time I've ever seen it in silent film, scrolling text. They'd have really long lines of dialogue that slowly the camera pans down. There's a scrolling effect. There's a lot of dialogue on this film. It really is. You could probably take the intertitles out and it'd be probably like 45 minutes long. There's so many intertitles and so much dialogue going on. And then, of course, the most famous thing about this film is the way it looks, the sets. The sets were cheaply made, and they are the light is painted into the scenes. You have these sharp angles, just like sharp black points painted onto the walls and the floors, and going up at angles, and the buildings are crooked. It really is the purest form of German expressionism I've ever seen. I mean, I've seen bits of it in films like Sunrise and Dr. Mabuse the Gambler and Metropolis, I guess, in a way maybe, but this is just absolutely wall to wall just weirdness. I mean, it is really unsettling to watch. It makes you feel uncomfortable. You can't get a grounding, a footing in this village and in the location. I mean, they go to this, like the town kind of the people who run the town, like they have a building where they're kind of, Dr. Caligari turns up, he needs a permit to kind of show off Caesar, and he goes into this little, this building, but it's just like a little room, and it's so claustrophobic, and it just made me feel uncomfortable. And in that sense, I think it really worked. And I was thinking about it last night, just sat lying in bed thinking, what makes a great film? This is hailed as a masterpiece. Should I see it as a masterpiece? I don't know. And I feel like, really, I whittled it down to 5 things. There are 5 things I judge a film for in terms of how good it is, whether it's a masterpiece or not, whether it's crap. And let me try and remember it, because I was just thinking about it in my head last night in bed. I'm a poet and I don't even know it. 1, characters. Are the characters interesting and 3-dimensional? 2, the story. Where do the characters go? Is the story good and interesting, and makes you think about whatever? The direction, the way that the film is presented, and shot and all that kind of stuff, and how that works into the overall thing of the film. Then the music, how does that play into it, I think is another thing that's really important. And I think the 5th one was atmosphere. and the atmosphere can be, you know, dictated by the performances or by the music, and maybe that's not the best 5 things to go for, because performances really matter too. So I guess characters/performances, the story, the direction, the music, and the atmosphere, you know, the cinematography and stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's a weak basis for judging a film, but you know, for this, the characters not that great. They're one-dimensional. You know, the main character is just going around trying to find out what's happened, and just like, you know, did he do it? You know, what about this guy? Okay, I need to do this. I need to, you know. Dr. Caligari had a lot of dimensions to him as you find out more about him towards the end, I guess. Caesar has really no dimensions to him at all, but the atmosphere of his character is incredible. You know, and the guy who played him, Conrad Veidt, I don't know how you pronounce that, had a huge career. I mean, this was probably his first iconic role. Then he went on to do The Man Who Laughs, which if you've seen that classic picture of a silent actor who has that big grin that looks exactly like the Joker, that's him. That's the guy who plays the somnambulist in Dr. Caligari. And he also was in Casablanca. You know, he transitioned over to Hollywood, but he's great in the film. Very just creepy performance, you know. Yeah, I really enjoyed his performance in terms of how uncomfortable it made me, and just the lighting and the tinting, the way, you know, the colors work, and the sets. At times I'd see the actors' feet kind of running along the sets, and you see the set kind of go down a bit because it's so cheap, and that took me out of it. I have to say, it took me out of it a little bit, just a little bit. And some of the way that the lighting was painted on really worked, and was like, wow, that's a great effect, a great illusion. But at other times it just didn't, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. So, but overall, overall, I think it really worked for me. Now, I'm going back. I think I kind of messed the 5 things, right? Characters, story, direction, atmosphere, emotion. That was it. Right, okay, I've got it. Characters, are the characters interesting, and the people who perform them, the acting. 2, the story, the script, and the way the story goes. 3, the direction, from the cinematography and the way that the film is shot. 4, the atmosphere in terms of the music and the way it looks. And 5, emotion. What emotion does it evoke out of me? That's what it was. I should write that down. It works for me. I think it's a sound, you know, 5 points that make a film good or not. And the emotion that I got out of this. And I usually think of a film like, is a film great because it makes me, you know, emotional in terms of like sad, or, you know, does it make me happy? Does it make me laugh? And this film didn't make me happy. It didn't make me sad. It didn't make me laugh. But this film made me feel uncomfortable. And sometimes I undervalue that you know, the way that emotion can be conveyed to a viewer, I guess, because there's not many films that do make. Well, I guess there's films that just gross out, like Saw and stuff like that. That, you know, just make me feel uncomfortable, and it's not in a good way. This was a good way. This unsettled me. There was a point in the film just halfway through where I was just like, it just weirds me out. Like, I don't like it. Like, I don't like the way I'm feeling right now. It's chilling, you know, and it's just really weird. You know, it's just bizarre. It's so bizarre, and the bizarreness makes you feel, again, unsettled, disturbed, whatever. I'm just recycling words at this point, but I think in that sense it really does work, and it's very original, you know. And I think the thing that kind of brought me around, because the whole film I was like, this is good, I'm enjoying it, it looks great, I feel a bit uncomfortable, you know. I think I like the way they filmed it in a way, but I don't know. Well, actually, I don't know. I wouldn't say the direction is that great. There's just static shots of the sets. I mean, the sets do the talking in the film. The direction, I guess, really is more focused on the, you know, what's happening, you know, the moving parts, I guess. The camera doesn't really move, for just static all the time. But I like the way that, like, the shots would kind of transition. There's some cool transitions where you'd have, say, a character appear, and then like there'd be a circle, and then, you know, the rest of the screen's black, and then the circle closes on them, and then another one opens down here and into another scene, and then it closes down again, it comes back out, and it's kind of like different perspectives and stuff. I like that. But the whole film made sense at the end because you find out the big twist. So again, if you don't want to be spoiled anything by this film, if you haven't seen it and you're planning on checking it out, I'd say skip ahead for about a minute. So it turns out at the end, the main character, who's telling the story at the beginning and saying, oh, this is what happened, he's the one who's crazy. It's not Dr. Caligari. And the whole film we've seen is just the madness going on inside his mind, and he's the one who's nuts. Absolutely awesome twist. I was wondering if it was coming, and it did, and it made the whole film made sense because you're inside someone's mind. and that's why it's all fucked up. That's why the sets are crazy and it's weird and it's uncomfortable, because you're inside the mind of a nutter, and that I fucking loved. I really did like that. And so yeah, I watched Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, in the first silent marathon last year, and that's kind of hailed as a classic masterpiece. And I kind of thought, yeah, it was great, I really liked it, but it wasn't quite a 10 out of 10 for me. I think this might be. This might be. I'd have to watch it again. Right now, I cautiously put it about 9 out of 10 because you know, it didn't. The characters weren't that great, but I think the story was interesting enough. Kind of the mystery of the murders going on. But also just like what's going to happen. Where's Caligari and his his somnambulist going to end up, and where's the main character going to go? Who's going to die? What's going the reveal be? Where's the backstory? So many things were running through my mind as I was watching it. Even if it did bore me a little bit, it did drag a little bit, even though it's quite a short film. But the story was good. I liked the story, and especially the ending was fantastic. The way it was framed from the beginning and the ending, and then how the ending changes your perspective of the entire film. That was great. Characters not so much. So you got 1 out of 5 so far. The direction, the way that the film was put together, I think it worked just purely from the point of just how the characters jump out the screen. From Caligari to well, I guess it's just Caligari and Caesar in a way. The rest of the people almost just kind of like set dressing. I mean, the main character really isn't that great. Just a guy really. The atmosphere, top notch. Top notch. I mean, again, a little bit the cracks are showing here and there where it looks a bit too fake and doesn't work, and then emotion, just sheer unsettlement. So it kind of ticks off a little bit of each. I mean, the characters, you can go to, I mean, I say the characters aren't great, but I think Caligari was great, and especially a certain part of his character near the end of the film. And then Caesar, however his name is pronounced, is a really great character just from a visual point of view. So it has little bits of everything, and some bits don't work, but overall a 9 out of 10 for now, I think. And if I watch it again, maybe I can kind of appreciate it. Just the raw singular vision of, let's just make something really weird and really out there and really unique and original, which it definitely is. And I don't know whether this kick-started the German Expressionism era, but it definitely defines it. And it's not often you find a film that is so just itself, the skewed perspectives, the warped sets and walls and lights, as I was saying earlier on in the whole marathon, Cour Fidèle, directed by Jean Epstein, when he said in the booklet of the Blu-ray that he thinks that this film is kind of style and no substance, and just it's kind of lazy to just kind of paint on the lighting and things like that. I don't know if maybe I agree, but I think there's something to be said about a film like this that can be just almost told I mean, that's the thing, because it's told visually just through the characters like Caligari and Caesar, where they're just like, they pop out of the screen from the way they act and the way they look, and it's it's weird. But then there is loads of dialogue, so I don't know. It's hard to quantify this one really, because it is so just itself. So that's what I'm going to say on it. Directed by Robert Wiener. Let me just see if I got the pronunciation correct. I did have a look on Google Translate. Robert Wiener. Okay, Robert Wiener directed this. I don't think he really went on to do anything as quite as iconic or everlasting as this. But yeah, I'm interested in kind of people's thoughts on this, definitely. So leave comments down below. I could definitely kind of see myself reevaluating things, and maybe even giving this a 10 out of 10 just based on how how singular it is. It just is itself. As I said, I'm repeating myself at this point, so I'll stop waffling on about it. But yeah, definitely check it out if you haven't seen it, and definitely one that you need to see before you die, I think. And that it's in the book, and I'll talk about that in the Epic Film Challenge too someday. But yeah, I really did enjoy it afterwards, and just the way it made me think about it and evaluate it. And I spent a lot more time thinking about it than some of the other films, I think. And just thinking, does that work? Does that not work? And I like evaluating films like that, so it's definitely up for discussion, and that's great. It gets people talking, and some great visuals, atmosphere, mood, and I love the whole framing device at the beginning and the end of the film too. So there we go, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.